Hello, everybody. Dadman Walking 55. Good to see you tonight. Man, I tell you what a day. It's been a special day in a lot of reasons, a lot of ways. Oh, started early this morning with a great stream with a friend that we haven't done in a few months. To get over it with Anna with tweets out there. Make sure you go back and check that one out. It was a lot of fun. Today, got work done. Things are working good at work itself, and it's the weekend, folks. Hey, what are your plans? What are you got set up for this wonderful weekend? And guess what? We are now at just about 2 months of 2026 down and gone now, folks. Life just continues to fly and fly and fly. So be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share it out with everybody if you don't mind on this wonderful Friday night. We are live. We got a lot to cover tonight. We got a big topic about Disney and the loss of storytelling, and can it be saved? And other franchises that are doomed to a similar fate at this point if things do not change. But let me bring in the man of the hour that to bring in the presentation to lead the discussion with us tonight. It's he's gave the best running commentary of Fortnite with the unicorn that I've ever had play by play. This guy, I really need to have this guy come in and play by play our unicorn, our Fortnite streams. It's the one, the only, the great Alaska Jeff. Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Greetings, one and all. Much appreciated for having me on. This is a
Yeah,
subject I'm deeply passionate about.
we talked about it quite a bit. We've done numerous topics. We've done Bigfoot. We've done the Aleutian Islands, which I loved, especially tying it into World War II. And the U.S. owns the islands, never to be given back. So anyway, but that came up this morning. But hey, Jeff, good to have you again. How have you been doing lately? You told me it was like a -11 this afternoon.
This morning, it got down to -11. And when it gets down to that point, your vehicle does not want to start.
Okay. I wouldn't want to start either. I'd want to go back in bed, stay under the covers and not get out at all. So look at this, no profanity in the chat, and for the poor unicorns. But I will say that night when we were playing Fortnite, it was like you gave a great play by play with the unicorn. Oh, he's down. And it was just, I tell you what,
Sometimes it
Jeff.
rolls off the
Yeah.
tongue. Sometimes it is like molasses to try and get started. So you got me in a
Well,
very rare moment.
all I know is that you're a heck of a lot better than all these football announcers on TV. You would be a fine professional broadcaster uh, with your demeanor and the way you deliver it. So, and it's a shame you're stuck playing OG all the time. I love OG, but I, I
It is a very big frustration that they cannot
yeah,
get that game working. And it is on them for messing that up. I do
how
not
the
blame
heck?
anyone else other than Fortnite and Unreal Engine.
So it's not a Microsoft or Windows 11 problem. The video cards, all that stuff. It's
Oh,
geez,
it falls on them too, but they made the hardware. The people that break it are the ones
yeah.
that keep adding in new pieces of code that do not cooperate well with the system.
Gotcha. And without enough testing and beta testing, you don't know what's going to
Absolutely.
happen. So, well, speaking of what's going to happen, we got a lot of material tonight. Jeff is going to talk about the loss of storytelling, how Disney fell and Star Wars fell, and I'm sure there will be Darth Maul talk for you people out there. Fallout Dave, West, and Sashi. Oh man, I just something happened earlier where Sachi's name got mentioned right in the middle of something. We're like, what the hell? Where did that come from? But all right, well, let's get to it. Jeff's got a lot to prepare and to present, and we'll take questions as it goes along. I will interject with questions as it happens. But let's say hello to the great chat. Leading off in the first bat, the leadoff spot, the great Snortopoopas Cuber. How are humans and other critters? Good to see you, sir. How are you tonight? We got Jeff saying hi to the bear.
What a
Legatus
nice little
Regionals.
bear.
Yeah, he is. He's Oh, by the way, it's International Polar Bear Day today.
Go boop your local polar bear on the snoot.
There you go. Tell him Snortopoopas sent you. It's okay. Tell him your cousin Snortopoopas said it's okay. And then here she is, Miss Russia herself. No, you cannot have Alaska back. We keep it forever. The great Anna's Gameland. And go check our get over it this morning. It was quite interesting. I will say. Maybe better buy an AI thing. It's great having my great co-host there tonight with us tonight. Even though it's late across the pond. Snort, yeah, okay, he's bashing the unicorns again. So, all right, and that's in the chat. We got some hellos and hellos. So, all right, we're ready, Jeff. So the premise of this is the loss of storytelling, specifically about Disney, the mouse, and what it's done in like Star Wars. But you've also include other franchises or other properties, right? That this is more than just a problem. It is a general across the board problem with how modern storytelling is made.
It is a problem that stretches decades, and in fact, if you were to really want to dig in deep, you could say it goes all the way back to something that Tolkien wrote about Disney. He said that he never wanted his property to be touched by the mouse, and it was because he was so disgusted by the way that they butchered storytelling. So
yes, well, let me ask
you that far if you wanted.
Well, let me ask it in terms, because see, I grew up with Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Ariel, The Little Mermaid, and then my wife's looking at me like, that's not how the fairy tales went. Little Mermaid had broken, bloodied feet. I mean, it was not painful. Every one of or Cinderella, the stepsisters had to cut themselves. I mean, it was gruesome. It's not like, oh, hey, what Disney shows. Oh, it's nice. And she gets the prince in the end. And it was a lot different in the stories that they made a lot of there's modern stories on.
Indeed. A lot of them, I actually would disagree with Tolkien and say that it was necessary. If you go back and look at the original fairy tales, they get dark. They get demonic. And
oh yeah.
If we end up having time later on, there is a reason as to why I stress upon that so much. But that is for a later time, probably, maybe a follow-up to this. I don't know.
Okay.
But it is something where it is a problem with the old fairy tales. And so I don't blame Disney for wanting to change things. But it was around the late 90s, early 2000s that a whole new mentality overtook the industry. And that mentality has since corrupted the company that many of us grew up loving. And so when we think about Disney kind of no longer being the same as we remember, we're going to go into why that matters, why that hits so hard. And it is a fascinating discussion. And I do want to stress for the people that are in the chat, this is an open discussion because this has impacted so many people. The loss of storytelling has made a lot of people very passionate about the subject, myself included. But a lot of people don't really know where to start with it. I tried to consolidate it into a way that we can kind of progressively look through it. This is not the first time I've done this. This is the third or fourth time, and it's still not refined enough. I want to try and refine this to the point of where there is like a hour-long documentary about this loss because it is so hard hitting. But that will be after a couple more years, probably.
Right. Well, you let me know when you're ready for me to pull up this the PowerPoint. But of course, Snortapoopa said Seward's Folly, and then can we give Atu and Kiska back to Japan?
Oh.
Why?
No. Although it is interesting that for those that were there, for that stream, there were a lot of Native Alaskans that ended up moving to Japan because of World War II. So, yeah, there is a lot of similarities with Native Alaskans and Japanese.
Okay, let's see.
Okay, Jeff, talking.
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me bring you up a little bit. I had to take somebody down the other night. Can you speak again real quick?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, I think that's better. Okay, all right. Here we go. We're off. I was about to say we're off to see the wizard.
No, technically,
although it's technically Disney because it was in the Great Movie Ride. Did you ever get to Disney when they had the Great Movie Ride?
Yes, I remember it.
What
It was technically another property, but Disney made several partnerships that and now is starting to consolidate all of it under one roof. And so, yeah, it's you could say they're all one company at this point. And the ones that are not part of Disney, it's only a matter of time unless something changes.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. And then don't even get started how Universal still has Marvel superheroes in its theme park, and that's a crazy thing. So, oh, Decon the Rat. Okay. All right, Jeff, you have the floor.
Well, I would like to start off by asking you a very important question. This is to you and this is to the chat.
Mm-hmm.
What makes a good story? If you could give like a list of like what are the main points you want to see in a good story?
By the way, real quick, Jess is here. Hey, Jess, got the 30-minute out alert, but actually not the go live alert. I'm sorry, Jess. But yeah, hey, at least you're here now. So, what makes a good story? You folks in the chat, feel free, put your opinions in, and I will highlight them and we'll share it with Jeff too. What makes a good story? What I want to see.
And by the way, for those that are watching, the system will glitch a little bit. That's because I have to be able to jump around this presentation because while it is fairly, streamlined, we will be going back and forth a little bit as I kind of
Right.
get inspired and based upon what feedback we have.
Okay.
Um,
I think for me, what makes a good story is, does it pique my interest? Does it get my curiosity up? Does it, yeah, you know, it could be of any type of topic. It could be historical, could be fantasy. I think that's to me is if it can hold my interest in terms. I know that's a big valley. It's hard to be very specific with it because anything could take that interest. But I tell you, there's a lot of things that have happened that have bored me really quickly. I guess when I say pique my interest, is like I could read one page and know I want to read a book. That's some. If I can read a segment and it's like got my interest, then I know, and that's what I mean by piquing my interest. If it can have my interest, we got Anna says likable main character. Snort and Poopa says tight plotting, good characters, and lots of polar bears.
Well, he's probably a big fan of the recent 2D animated short that came out then.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Anything with polar bears? Anybody else? Any other thoughts or opinions there? What makes a good story to you? I get, like I said, if I can read one, how like they tell you at work, get to the point. You you've got to have that summary that gets somebody's attention and draws them in. That's what I think is something that can get my interest really quickly, where I don't have to invest a lot of time into it. That I know it's something I want to do or read.
Indeed. See, these are good ones to start off with. And actually, I would agree with many of these ideas already. It's a tough one. This is incredibly tough to try and figure out because you will find lists that go in all sorts of directions of what makes a good story or not. Tastes are varied. And the fact that if I was to list like what my favorite film of all time is, I can guarantee that probably only 10% of the people here would actually agree with that. I did that test actually a while back. We had a room full of people and I asked, what is your favorite movie? And oh my goodness, there was no similarity. And so when I look at this stuff, I have to think about it in that sort of point of view. You're never going to fully agree, but you can at least agree on a couple of core elements that make a good story. Whether or not those elements are weighted in a certain way or not depends on the person. But regardless, you have to have a good story for it to be memorable and to make a good, lasting impact. You fail and you alienate people. And companies, sadly, are not even asking why this is happening because modern day books, movies, music, the whole gamut of the entertainment world is losing fans, and nobody is stopping to say why. If I was to
Yeah.
list the main points, and by the way, again, feel
Mhm.
free, folks, to jump
See,
in whenever you want.
but see, that's the other thing too. You should always be looking why. Why are things happening? Why looking for trends? I mean, you do it in business, you do it in sports, you do it in all kinds of things. You know, sort of wonder if one of the biggest threats and challenges to any organization is complacency, arrogance. We've been
Hmm.
around the movie, like say for movies, we've been around 100 years, whatever. We'll always be around. And now we see the advent of streaming, people staying at home after 2020 now, uh, and things like that that are challenges there. I mean, because the industry's being very complacent. They can always rely on this stuff, or we can rely on this stuff. And then changes in technology that change people's viewing preferences or availability. And I'd say that's a big threat is complacency because it'll never happen to us. We'll always be the gold standard and all. And well, guess what? Look, Sears, Montgomery Wards, all these department stores that were Woolworths with their lunch counters and stuff, they're gone.
Hmm. So, that's a very important thing to take into account. And again, nobody's asking those questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was sitting down trying to figure out a list because I have seen lists before and I cannot find one that I am happy with. And so I just sat down and started putting out everything that I would say is on a list that should make for a good movie. Now, how this gets used again is up for interpretation based upon the person. But these are the main points you're probably going to have people making their judgments based upon. Oh, and by the way, folks, if I pause for a moment and don't mind me, I'm still getting over a little bit of an illness, and it is sometimes I have to cough. So stand by.
Mm.
Okay, here we go. So first off, I would say that a movie has to have purpose. The purpose is why we want to watch the movie or read the book to begin with. If it doesn't have a purpose, well, why bother? Why take your time and waste it on something that could take minutes to hours or even days of your life to try and consume? Plot. What happens in the story that matters? How is it interesting? The moral. Reasons to watch it again or to share it. Characters. Who's involved? Um, Based upon characters, most people are going to say that characters are what drive the story. I put it as the fourth in the list because the other ones have to work for the characters to
Mm-hmm.
work. Conflict, how the story unfolds, the theme, the lesson or the value. Now, I put this one further down on the list, even though personally I would put it higher, but I think most people actually put it around here because that can change and fairly easily. And you can still have a very similar sounding story. Humor, ways to keep the subject lighthearted. This cannot be stressed enough. A lot of people lean too much into humor, and as a result, it starts to lose any impact. Humor has to be a part of every story, otherwise, it can get utterly depressing, or it can get too sappy, or any number of things.
Mm.
Humor is needed to break up the plot and the conflict.
But it can never be overdone. I think like maybe I think Thor Ragnarok was supposed to be. I mean, it's supposed to be a humorous movie, but it was one that seemed like it was overkill. Yeah, you
Oh,
really
if we want to
made
go into Thor Ragnarok, we could be here for another 45 minutes or an hour. Oh, that was
oh,
a horrible
absolutely.
movie.
Absolutely, and as Anna's chiming in that humor done right is very important in a good story. And Tom, I'm sorry about that with X though, X and Twitter and YouTube. it's crazy. But yeah, but see, I like I said, humor done right is important, and it has to be well timed. A
Hmm.
joke at the wrong time in a very serious situation, just like like I've heard this analogy on a Pacific World War II podcast. It goes over like a fart in church. Is that it's like, oh, it doesn't fit right and is really awkward and embarrassing. You tell the wrong joke at the wrong time in the wrong setting, or the overuse of humor. You know, I, I I mean, unless you're watching The Naked Gun, but yeah, it's all these are good
Humor,
points. So yeah.
yeah, humor, unfortunately, has become uh, mathematical in how it's presented. And we're going to
Hmm.
go into as to why this is such an issue later on. But keep your eye on humor because it can be a great boost to your story and it can absolutely destroy it. Imagination, experiencing
Hmm.
something special. Um, a lot of people would put this really high. They want to see something imaginative, magical, or a place that helps them to forget the kind of humdrum life that they have. Um, but we're not going to go into it today, but this can actually get into some pretty problematic stuff. And
Hmm.
imagination does have limits. I am not for you know, unrestricted imagination. I have learned by observing other people that this, just like humor, can be done wrong and it can destroy your story and even the lives of the people that are involved.
Okay.
Beauty, the reason to enjoy the story. This isn't just visual beauty, but the beauty of the story, the sounds, the experience, the feelings that are developed from it. Action, what moves the characters to the end goal of the story. And by the way, end goal is crucial. Without an end goal, the story falls apart. Nostalgia, it brings in a dedicated audience. Most people, when they go and see a movie, it's because it sparks something in them. Some form of nostalgia causes people to want to go to see a movie, to read a book. You look at if I was to give you a movie and I'd say, "Hey, this is a great movie," and you look at it and you see a pink elephant on the front of it riding a unicycle in a space war, you would look at it and say, I have no reason to be inspired by this at all. And you would just pitch it to the side and say,
Yeah.
I don't see a reason to want to even open it. So you have to give something that people are familiar with to latch onto. Finally, we have setting, where the story takes place. This one doesn't matter. Everything else can change and it destroys the story. But you change setting and it doesn't impact a thing. And I've seen this happen on like theater performances. They'll tell like Romeo and Juliet, and they will start changing the setting like halfway through the story just to kind of mess with people, and it doesn't change the story. So setting can
Mhm.
change.
You mentioned humor. Another comment about humor. Snort says Peter Jackson used too much humor in the Lord of the Ring movies, which he likes, by the way, but he goes over the top with both Legolas and Gimli compared to the books. Yeah, like the how Goldilocks goes up the Oliphant and on the arrows, and then puts three into his brain, and then slides down the snout, and then with the flowing blonde hair. Look for all the ladies out there, and you got Gimli right there. It still counts as one. It's a funny scene, but yeah, but but I think that was a movie that happened to, like Snort said, compared to the books. There's not that humor in the books, but it was a nice addition because they were careful not to overdo it.
Hmm.
At least in my opinion, overall. I mean, there others may disagree. They may think there's too much humor in the movie, but I thought that using that example, they were able to insert some jokes that were actually pretty good, or humor scenes.
Indeed. Um, I remember when I was growing up, there was a couple of people that started telling me like, "There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing new under the sun. There's no There's no new story out there. You just got to rehash something that is
Mm-hmm.
already there. Don't
Right,
bother putting effort into it. It's irrelevant."
right.
And we're
Well, I'm
gonna
going to hit.
go. In,
I'm sorry, Jeff. I was going to hit this real quick before you move too far from the other
Sure.
slide, because Anna's bringing up nostalgia, which was on the slide. Nostalgia is big for a lot of people, but it works if you do it right. Mortal Kombat 2 or He-Man or Street Fighter, in her opinion, those type of
Mm,
things. I mean, it's a franchise that harkens back to something of our childhood, something from before, but you got to do it right. You can't do She-Man out of He-Man, or, you know, people are not going to go to it. It's not what they grew up. I mean, just using something old as a member berry is not sufficient, because when you destroyed what it was, there your nostalgia, is ruined. It's gone.
indeed. One of the problems that happens with a lot of writers is they start to try and randomly stitch things together. And they think that somehow they can blend the events together into a coherent story. Um, but this becomes a problem, um, because a story, regardless of what story you have, it has to have an end goal. Um, it's the reason why you tell somebody about your trip. It's not because you're just saying, hey, I went out and did something. You say there's a point to it. I went to somewhere in order to do this. If you can't answer that question, you shouldn't be writing a story.
Mm-hmm.
An example of this would be when I was growing up, and my grandmother had a bad habit, you could say, of interjecting. It was her way of like kind of changing the subject. But it always started off with, "You'll never guess what I bought at Costco today." And it's like, let me guess, you bought muffins at Costco. You bought, I don't know, maybe some new towels. It always was, I found something on sale. And so thus it became, I went to in order to do this. While it worked, it got tiring very quickly. And so it became a bit of a joke.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to change the subject, you just say, "You'll never guess what I bought at Costco." But anyway, some people write like that. And they think,
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to write a compelling story using this strategy. It doesn't work. Stories must have a point. Otherwise, it's nothing but mindless fiction. In reality, it's just skits or jokes. And unfortunately, this is why a lot of films start to become mocked the older they get, because they have nothing more than a punchline attached to it. A good example is Roadrunner and Coyote. I know a lot of people that love the animated cartoons, but it lacks any story whatsoever. Coyote wants to catch the Roadrunner. That's the
Mm-hmm.
plot every single time, just like the Costco story. It gets tired fast. And pretty soon it's nothing more than, hey, let's see what weird gimmick he has, and then the show's over. It makes it for something that's fine when it's, 5 minutes. But if it's longer than that, it starts to need to justify why it's taking so much time in order to tell the story. Kind of
Right.
like what I'm doing right now. We're taking
Mm.
a fair chunk of time. There is an end goal to this, and it is to help educate people on how to make a good story. There is a point
Mm-hmm.
to the journey rather than just saying, kind of like what a bunch of mindless channels out there will do, where they just randomly start ranting about, oh, Star Wars is terrible because of this, or Star Trek is now terrible because of this, or oh, the Fast and the Furious. People will rant a lot, but they won't usually have a point to why they're ranting.
Right.
I want to give you all the equipment to be able to give your rants wisely and know why
Right.
it kind of irritates you and things
Right.
like this.
Listen,
Skip.
everybody knows I love to rant, and it's fun to rant. It's really emotional and all, but you do have to get it. Make sure when you want your point to get across, you've got to make sure that you've communicated a point. Otherwise, it's just a personal opinion. You don't like something, it's get over it, because it's just your opinion. There are critical aspects that need to be proven, or stated, in order to prove a point, or prove your position, support a position on some of these things, not just ranting. But speaking of ranting, I got to say, hey to Fallout Dave. Hey, Fallout Dave. Sashi, you came through this morning with some food, and dude, if you only knew what I had watched an hour ago, just say token, more say token. Yeah, I want. I'm laughing, Jeff, because we put something in an AI a little while ago. Anna did, and man, it pontificated about my rants and stuff like that. That's why I came in laughing so hard, is because and saw she was mentioned in by the AI. It's like, it's hilarious. Sorry, but yeah, but and it's like, to me, it was like he just rants indiscriminately, and I'm like, and that's the thing. It's fun to rant. It's fun to yell a little bit at times. It can feel good, but if you're trying to convince somebody to your point and actually win an argument, or win, not necessarily debate, but just give somebody something factual and not just opinion. These are matters. It is important to lay the groundwork, the framework. Otherwise, it does come up. It's just an opinion, and everybody has an opinion, like body parts.
And if it's just an
everybody
opinion, then nobody will ever be able to agree upon it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because they'll just say, "Oh, it's your opinion. It doesn't matter."
Yeah. Snort says, but the cartoon lasts a couple of minutes, but could you make an interesting 2-hour movie with a typical Roadrunner and Coyote plot?
See, that's indeed the challenge. And some people have argued that's why we never saw the Roadrunner and Coyote movie come out. There was they were in the process of making it, but to my knowledge, it's not even leaked out. They just killed it. But some people have theorized that's what happened. That being said, there is a way to tell a good, compelling story, but it would anger the original audience, and that introduces the next part of this discussion.
Well, we are all familiar about angering the audiences if you're a Star Trek or Star Wars fan. So go ahead, Jeff.
Precisely. YouTube has been filled with people getting angry at stuff that has been destroyed. Every story needs to have a clear beginning and a determined end. This is something I cannot stress enough. Just like it's all goes down to the purpose. Why are we hearing this story? Why do you need to take an idea that could be conveyed in 5 minutes, like a Roadrunner and Coyote plot, and then extend it out to being something that is hours and hours of your time? When done right, and you have a clear beginning and determined end, you get a classic. But start to add to it after the fact, after you have concluded, and you're starting to struggle with conveying to the audience why they should bother continuing to stay up to date. And Star Wars is incredibly guilty of this. But other franchises have also started to try and do this, and it hasn't gone over so well. This is the problem of nostalgia. See, nostalgia is a great way to get people into the seats. But if you betray that nostalgia, it comes back and bites hard. If the story doesn't add new information or detail, people start to think of it as just trying to bait them. You're trying to trick them into giving more money. Problem is that most people will still give the money. They don't have the self-control. And I can't necessarily blame people for that.
Yeah.
But it is something where you can only do that so many times before people finally get burned.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, Tom, by the way, I'm sorry if I think I forgot to say hi to Tom in there. I thought I typed it in, but good to see you tonight, Tom. So I'm glad even though the notifications aren't working, I'm glad you're here.
I want to take a brief moment and talk about nostalgia. See, I used to think of it fondly. I used to think that, nostalgia is a great way to bring people into the theater. That was before I started seeing it abused. I think it's important to remember what it actually even means. And I've learned recently that nostalgia means it's a sad pleasure experience in recalling what it no longer exists. a wishful or
Hmm.
sentimental yearning for a return to or a return of some real or romanticized past period or some irrecoverable past condition or setting.
Hmm.
The more I thought about it, the more that just started to hit hard. Um, and I started having my own like nostalgia withdrawals when I even just started thinking about it, preparing this slide, and it's like, oh my goodness, so many things have been lost.
Hmm.
Well, now you start thinking, oh well, a movie's not a problem. But see, a movie starts to hearken to your own external experiences, and it starts to eat at you, and slowly but surely, that nostalgia, which is good for a story, starts to become the worst choice for a film or a book to lean on.
Hmm.
Nostalgia is not a happy thing, but a memory that starts out as joy and eventually becomes sorrow and grief, to the point of where once you start experiencing it too much, you just want to put it in a box, put it on the shelf, and never touch it again. But you don't want to get rid of it because that would admit that it's gone permanently. You still want to have
Yeah,
it there, but you don't want to keep opening it up. There are
I
some
say,
movies I refuse
yeah,
to watch because of this exact thing.
I say Star Wars. Sorry, Grogu and whatever. I don't care about it. Rebels, yeah, they came out. I didn't care about it even before whatever. I after the Last Jedi, I didn't care about it. I did watch Mandalorian season 2. Okay, it was nice to see Luke Skywalker, but I still know where they took the end of all of it.
Hmm.
And it does. And what happens? You got the sadness, and you get tired of getting burned and sad. And what you've seen with Star Trek, Star Wars, people are just okay. It's done. Ours is this up to this point, that's it. Nothing else exists because this is the world that we want. This is our world to escape to, and this is what we think it should be. And what they did after, just really just ruined all of it. Speaking of nostalgia, Legata said here, unfortunately, nostalgia only goes so far as too often, which we loved, is being corrupted by those who see only another IP platform. Or I mean, in this case, it's be wokeness, but it could be even more. It could be. It doesn't have to be woke. It could be, anything that changes the story, anything that takes away the lore, or undercuts the franchise. And Anna also said, I agree. Keep it short and simple, beginning and end. They want to expand and bloat. But I appreciate that. That's very interesting with the dangers of nostalgia because usually we think nostalgia is just a nice, simple, innocent thing. But what could be good could be used for evil too,
And
or
sadly,
bad.
a lot of
Yeah.
things recently have started leaning into that evil aspect.
Hmm.
And I do think it's like a psychological weapon. Um, if you want to break somebody, you send them something that, caused them to get nostalgia. And so I very much want people, if you can tell someone's motives when they present something that is nostalgic and they do it with grace, then you start to embrace it and you get like rekindled with that joy.
Hmm.
But if you break that trust, if you present nostalgia and then stab somebody with it, like a certain series,
Yep.
then you have done something horrible, and people start to view you as like a murderer in that sense.
Yep.
When the Force Awakens came out, it drew people in with nostalgia, but
Yeah.
sowed the seeds of betrayal.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
I To me, this first seed of betrayal was Han Solo died.
mm-hmm.
I don't care what the actor said. I don't care. You can't kill off a character like that. There goes, you started your first step to destroying nostalgia. Then what happens? We never got the four main actors ever together at one point,
Indeed.
which is what fans wanted. I mean, too much fan service can be a bad thing, but that's one that you should have done. You should. It's just elementary because you know what it did. It caused hurt and pain. And then when Carrie Fisher passed away, it's all gone. Why? Because they wanted to write one character off. All they had to do was put Luke Skywalker in that first one and have the four back together. And even with Lando, but I'm sure you may touch more on that. So I just, yeah, I agree. It's like I put it in a box that, okay.
One
I
of the
think the problem is apathy. apathy is the worst thing that can ever happen to a story, a franchise, or anything else. It's one thing when people just hate it or whatever else, but when people just don't care anymore, how can you ever recover from that? And Sam, hey Sam, yeah, it's a spicy subject. I figured you'd like to hear Jeff tonight. Jeff tonight. By the way, a week ago, Wednesdays on Sam's channel, she interviewed my mother-in-law, who's 90. She served a year in the Air Force around the Korean wartime, and this Wednesday she's got something with the missus and me that's offshot from that about an extended family member on my wife's side. So good to see you tonight, Sam. So, and Snort said, at least give a character death a meaning. Han Solo could have had a heroic death that meant something. Yeah, I expanded on that on our Get Over It this morning about compared his death in that movie to Chewbacca's in the books, howling at a moon, defying a moon coming down on him versus, hi, Dad. Hey, son, I love you. Or I'm sorry, Jeff.
We have George Lucas here.
I know. I mean, this is like therapy for me tonight. I'm like, sorry, I need to let you talk again. Oh yeah, George, isn't that he pops up at the strangest times? George Lucas does, but good to see.
Well, we're going to be talking about how George Lucas was betrayed.
Yeah. Well, and to tell you what, that's what happened with The Force Awakens. It was nothing but a big member berry. And it was after that when people started, and I was like, yeah, I thought there were enough differences from the original Star Wars, but it mirrored it so many ways that, yeah, I could see how it just was the same movie again. And they basically, at that point, you wasted 1 or 3 movies. And then, okay, let me let you go ahead. Sorry, Jeff.
Well, we are going to actually be, in a moment here, we're going to be taking a break from Star Wars, and we're going to come back to this because this is... Star Wars is how we're going to be ending this because it is such a very complex one. But we're going to be taking a moment and kind of veering off track here for a little bit.
Oh, kind of like a squirrel stream. Hey,
sorry. Precisely.
Right.
But in this case, it's a rabbit trail because it all will lead back to the burrow.
Jeff, you're using terms and words that I heard on this AI thing of my stream this morning that are just busting me out laughing. So it's like,
oh no,
yeah, like or rabbit trails and stuff like that. It was like that. It was hilarious. But go ahead. I'm sorry, Jeff.
So when Disney did it, they started off by building up the fan base with nostalgia, and then the knife in the back came with the Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did it show that the characters they love were gone, it intentionally destroyed their memory without a compelling reason as to why it happened, just like was mentioned with Han Solo's death. But that goes for everything. Everything with the old characters, they were not given a send-off. They were given a humiliation ritual.
Right. And I want to work this point in here to this before you go too far. Sam said, I spent my entire teenage adolescence wanting to see Han Solo and Leia's love story, and they stripped me of it, like they're the skip, and they said they broke up because of what happened. The first movie out, they're divorced, they're split up, all this other stuff. Once again, we have a franchise that cannot just keep a couple together. Their kids, yeah, they had a troubled marriage in life, and there were all the challenges like in real life, but they were together, and it went, but like that, they robbed the fans of that part too.
Designed to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is that every series is at risk of doing this, even if they do their best to try and avoid this pitfall. And this is where ideology starts to come in. And we're going to intentionally avoid this because it would be a very long discussion. But believe me, I actually prepared it because I realized what a very big issue this is.
Yeah, and we had talked about getting through. Yeah, and we talked about getting through the whole presentation. If we have time, we can always go back. Yeah,
indeed. But I do want to stress that values are also capable of destroying a series. I view Fantastic Beasts as being actually a good attempt to try and give a meaningful prequel to the Harry Potter series. But unfortunately, the virtues were gone. They started to go back and change things. So not only can a series be destroyed by nostalgia baiting and stabbing in the back, it can also be a betrayal to everything you've come to know and value. It can take the very rules of the world that were set up and turn them on its head,
Mhm.
either for just, ruining the story in terms of what Star Wars did, or to try and insert modern ideology to change how we perceive the old. And that is what happened with Fantastic Beasts. But now we're going to go into a bit of an exploration of what makes a bad story. So we went over what makes a good story, of that focusing on the um, different elements of purpose, plot, moral, whatnot. But what happens when you have a film or a book that goes in the exact opposite, or um, tries to succeed but fails to capture some of those elements? It's a risk to mention some of the films out there because it could actually make people very upset. I know some people that actually really, really, really like Aragon, and they would look at this and say, "Oh, absolutely not! That is not on the list. It is a masterpiece." There's some people think that Sharknado is a masterpiece. So
Ah, that's me.
just because it's a bad story doesn't mean that it doesn't have fans, but we have to acknowledge a bad story for being for failing some of the main elements of a good story. Um, Sadly, a lot of films that start out with good intentions end up making those terrible mistakes. Airbender is one of those. They had everything going for them, and they fumbled horribly.
Yeah.
Um, Gladiator. I don't know if you knew this, but Gladiator almost became a dud. And the people that were making the film were like, oh no, this is going to be terrible. And it was on the editing floor that the film was saved and became a classic.
And they talk about that with Star Wars, the original. The editing room floor got it. There's discussion about that. Snortopoopas, good night. And Sashi also had to leave us, but thanks for coming by, guys. We appreciate it. So watch replay later when you can. But yeah, I've some of them. One of the biggest problems I've seen is when they take a book and completely dismantle the book. Uh,
Hmm.
I offer that the expanded universe did not need to be done book for book, as it would have been too boring. You did need to change some things, but if you stay in the spirit of the bloodline of the main elements and the tone of it, not trying to destroy the main people. One of the worst books you talked about sometimes when they're so different and sometimes when they're just like the movie. The one of the most boring movies I've ever watched was The Pelican Brief because I read the book, but it was so much like the book. But what they didn't show you, the only reason I could fill gaps was because I had read the book, because I knew what had happened. They never laid out the foundation in the movie. Whereas The Firm, I can never give up that Tom Cruise walks in there and says, "Hi, Mr. Mob Guys. I'm going to rat out my bosses, but I can't talk about you because of attorney-client privilege. I'm sorry. That's not in the book, and it's not realistic with life. The mafia would not let you walk out that door. They're not." And then the FBI got in. I'm like, just like, that was one movie that made me so mad. I went and bought, not a library, I went and bought the book to read it.
Hmm.
And I loved it because, once again, they take it. The writer, the author, wrote a fascinating book, one of the best books I've ever read. It was worth everything that people had said. But the movie was just it. It lost me. It
Hmm.
was. It's one of those that I had to suspend belief too much. It was a bridge too far. And just I think an example of bad storytelling in a movie. There's times you
With
stay with the book, and there's times that you can change slightly, and you should change some things.
There's some stories that can be saved by changing stuff like that. Sadly, a lot of people in the industry don't know how to write a good story. And as a consequence, when they try and fix a story, they
Yeah.
fail.
Yeah.
Um,
Can I share a
One of
couple
the
things real
oh yeah,
quick, Jeff? Sam said the setup and payoff in Fantastic Beasts' second movie did not work. They tried too hard to subvert expectations and have gotchas and be tricky. They broke the story. Okay, we got that, and then I'm
indeed.
assuming this is her oldest daughter wants to yell at you that she likes Aragon.
Oh no. Don't worry. The book was all right. It wasn't rip off, but the book itself was good. The movie, by the way, the movie has some really good actors. But when they got to halfway in the movie, they ran out of money. And you can tell
Yep.
very clearly where they ran out of money because suddenly their costumes got bad and their cast got tiny and they had a big battle that was supposed to happen and they couldn't do it. So they did it with just a few individuals and it was so hokey.
Jeez. Money
Um,
speaks. Money speaks. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
yeah. But the problem is that now people started realizing that you can get,
Wait a second.
you know,
Wait. I got to stop you, Jeff, though. Sorry. My apologies. That's not what I think in the top right, is it? That's not what I think it is. The
it'd
cats
be
with
the
the
Cats
hideous,
movie. Yes,
the
indeed.
hideous horrific CGI
I
stuff.
tried to choose one that wasn't, too uh disturbing.
That's disturbing. That movie was so. You know what? We need to watch it as a watch party night just to troll it one night because that. Oh, by the way, I guess the daughter, okay, agrees with you in your analysis of the book versus the movie. By the way, that book was the first not picture book she ever read in her life. Oh, nice.
Indeed.
Very nice.
I remember when the book came out, everyone was talking about it, and I didn't get to read it until like 3 years later. And it definitely had me hooked. I will say that. It didn't finish the series, but I did read the first one. And by the way, the mentor in Aragon is also the voice of Scar. Very good actor. I wish he was in more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that now there's like a precedent set. A lot of people now think they can make a bad story and try and get into that cult classic mentality. But, that's really risky business. And it's more likely you're just going to make something people hate and they're not going to give you a second chance.
Yep.
And why does that matter? Well, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but up until recently, until the digital age, and not even just digital, really just the 2010s, there were warehouses of scripts. And we got to see some photos of this when I was at college. And they were literally feet upon feet of these scripts just stacked through a warehouse. It was impossible to find something. They would get a script and they just thrown onto the pile. Because people sent it in constantly. Oh, maybe you'll read my script. And they just look at it, read the first page, and then pitch it onto the pile. And no one would ever see it again. And so sometimes you would have one rediscovered. And usually it's after the author had passed. So, don't have to worry about royalties. So it makes some questions. But there were places like this that would burn down. They would just suddenly combust in a flame and all the scripts, thousands upon thousands of scripts, gone. But now think about the fact that those will never be turned into movies. And so the ones that you see are probably well less than 1% of the stories made. So if you fail and you try and make a gimmick film that becomes a cult classic, you risk never getting a chance to make another film again because you'll be alienated and you'll have to wait like decades to finally get, vindication.
Yeah. By the way, Mrs. is here. Hey, Mrs.
Hey, Mrs.
She's in the car with the family, cannot listen. We'll catch on the replay. Have a great stream. So, and Mrs. Anna says hi. Sam says that she's heard about the script warehouses, and Anna is actually bringing out. I keep hearing about this. I've not watched it. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is a good way to storytell, change certain aspects, yet keep the morals and ethics. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that show.
No, I'm not, but I am aware that it is being talked about by many folks. Yeah. Sometimes, though, they can have a story that is a knockoff. Like the one currently pictured on screen here, Rebel Moon, that is a Star Wars ripoff. And actually, if you go back to how the story got started, it was claimed that it was actually designed to be for the world of Star Wars, and then they couldn't get the story done, and so they just made their own, own knockoff version of this.
Still
So
probably
it
better
has a
than
bad
anything.
reputation.
Yeah, I've
But
heard
it
of
all
it
is
though.
about egos at that point. Who's going to get their story told? Probably the one with the most power, money, or the one who's just the most obnoxious.
Yeah,
But here's the worst part
Alien.
of a bad story. It's
Okay.
when evil wins. I don't know if you've watched the Alien movies. I finally watched most of them recently because I got tired of people saying, "What? You've never watched the movie?" So I finally sat down and watched them. Oh
Yeah,
my
we have
goodness,
a
I was
few Alien
disturbed by
fans
them.
out here. Yeah. Okay. What disturbed you about it? Was it either from the first one or was it as it progressed?
The entire saga is what disturbed me. And we're going to go into that a little bit. We're only going to touch on it because I could go on for a long time about this one too. Um, in fact, I think all these things considered, I probably could do an entire month of ranting and talking about all these
Yeah.
movies, and
Yeah.
we'd still have time to go. Um, but I want to point out the reason why the stories that focus on darkness become a problem, rather than be nitpicky about the Alien movies. Some stories end on a high note, only
Right.
to be let down in the opening of the very next film. Imagine Star Wars, Return of the Jedi. Everybody has been successful. We start off with The Force Awakens, and suddenly there's a divorce. Suddenly the whole group's kind of split up. Everything
Yep.
reverts back to square
And
one.
there's a big one in the Alien franchise, and I think I know which one you're going to talk about.
Indeed. So, every single one of these Alien movies, well, up until the one I kind of cut off at because I couldn't take anymore, starts off by resetting the board. It's the worst one, though, was from 2 to 3
Yes,
because you
you're right.
save the
Yep.
child, you save every,
Yep.
you
Sorry,
escape
Jeff.
only to have the kid die
Yeah,
in the very
Hicks.
next
I
scene.
loved Hicks. Hicks. Forget the kid. I was all about Hicks, Corporal Hicks.
Yeah, that too.
And it just. Oh, sorry about that, Jeff. It just. I'm glad you hide because I knew you were going there because it is. It's like it destroyed. I mean, the first and second really didn't have much of a connection because it was 40 years later. But then this one, it's like forget all the last movie. And I'm sorry to cut you off and delay the
No,
presentation,
that you're
but
perfectly fine doing that. That's why I said this is an open discussion here.
because it went from like a Rambo shoot 'em up military action movie to on 3 where we're running around a prison thing with we got blow torches maybe. What the anyway? It was so disappointing. It was actually a movie that I did want to walk out of too, but and then of course like we see the picture when he comes up to her. Oh wait, she's carrying. Okay, she lives.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, sorry about that.
No,
Oh
that's
God.
perfectly fine.
Well, Jeff, I think it hit the all-time low with the new Alien TV show. that was that was made a lot of fun of. So, hey, Tom, you enjoy your time with your dad tonight. Okay, enjoy the Battlefront 6. Okay, thank you though. While we had stopped here, Sam said back in high school, our friends and I made a text-based rocket propelled grenade for Star Wars with the okie dokie of Lucas, and we had to delete it all and just erase it from the internet when Disney got their hands on Star Wars. Yes. To me, RPGs are rocket propelled grenades, will always be. I know they're role playing games, so. But yeah, it's of course now you got to worry about anything you do out there with who owns it. So
Absolutely. And Disney is not friendly when it comes to using their IP.
yeah, yeah, and to the point about Alien 2 and 3 here, yeah. At the moment the next movie starts, they're like, actually, nothing we did before mattered at all.
Precisely.
And that's a good one too between Aliens and the third.
With the Alien movies in particular, it does introduce this idea that evil wins. And while it can be an interesting plot point, when that starts becoming the soul of your story, you start to lose hope. And it starts to become something where rather than give you something meaningful, a purpose to your story, it's all about trying to subvert it. It's taking the whole structure of what makes a good story and turns it on its head. The purpose is the last part of it. Everything else matters first.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people do like dark fantasies like this, and I can't necessarily fault them for wanting that stuff. I just think that it actually does take its wear and tear on you, and we won't go into the reason why I know that, but I have met people who are in that are recovering from leaning too much into dark fantasies. When a hero saves the day only for them to fail in the next entry of the story, that ruins why we should even cheer for that person. In that sense, they are the failure, and you want somebody who is more heroic, someone who actually can overcome the evil in the next story if this one keeps failing. That doesn't happen. And unfortunately, when you start to do this too much, well, you could say, alienating your audience.
But I'm
Well, we're going to take a shift here and now bring it back to Disney. Now we understand what makes a good story and makes a bad story, or at least know the basics of it. So I would like to introduce you to Walt Disney. He was a special and unique fella. He actually did not have a very good life starting out. Most artists don't. There's something that always spurs an artist forward that could be, devastating, or it could be just an irritation that eats at them enough to where they're like, I wanted to go out and change something. And Walt Disney was such a fellow. He was robbed of his childhood. And so what he leaned into was the concept of creating something for the entire family, something for the kid at heart, because he himself didn't get that opportunity. In fact, he was working from his youth, and chances to try and do artwork was limited to in his community, and so it's kind of a fascinating thing that he made the biggest media empire, and he started from such humble beginnings. Dadman, step away for a moment, so I'm going to go through the chat here. I hate it when they say that, yeah, we solved the problem. Then the moment the next movie starts, they're like, and actually nothing we did before mattered at all. Exactly. I find Mistborn interesting for the reason because they start with, what if the bad guy won and now everyone had to fix it? Interesting.
Yeah, sorry, Jeff. I had to
no
step
worries.
away a second. I'm back.
That's fine. So anyway, he had humble beginnings, and he leaned into this idea that he wanted to make a place that was safe for artists like himself, or what he wished he had had when he was younger. Well, they made some incredible stuff, and it was a hard road, though. A lot of problems occurred, and then something happened. Not only did they make a product that was successful, it was culture shaking. Have you ever seen the Three Little Pigs?
I probably did a long, long time ago, but I can't recall it at hand.
It's an interesting one. I had never seen it. I'd never seen anything more than like a clip here and there. I knew the song, but I never actually seen the show. And it's like, this was like groundbreaking, and
Mm-hmm.
took me by surprise. Um, well, what is the reason why is because it was in the middle of the Depression. And there was a lot of people that started saying that the film was inspiring to them. they were discouraged. They had lost everything. And then along comes this film and encourages hard work and dedication. And it will pay off by getting you out of trouble. And a lot of
Hmm.
people started to use it as like a motivational element to get them out of the depression. So while you will not find a whole lot of content nowadays kind of praising this film for helping with ending the depression, because there's political reasons as to why you don't want to do that, it really did help out tremendously. And if nothing else, it helped on the common man's level. But at that point, Disney was, a household name. Everybody became familiar with their animations. Thus enters the masterpiece of Snow White. Snow
Hmm.
White came out in 1937.
Jeff, hold on one second. Sorry, I've
Indeed.
got. But Sam said I've seen the Three Little Pigs and a lot of classic old Disney. His story is inspiring. So, from his standpoint, but yeah, the Three Little Pigs and Mr. Angel's here, our resident alien. Hello, polar bears here earlier. The aliens come in now. So, greetings, Mr. Angel. How are you doing? Okay, I just wanted to throw it in there because it's it is an inspiring story in a way. Rags to riches, and he did something for the family, and that's I think we'll probably get into more of the modern Disney as we continue this discussion. So, but okay, go ahead.
Indeed. Um, so, if I was to ask you what the most successful movie of all time was, what would you say is probably the most successful?
Well, I'd have to be. I would think. I want to look at pictures here. You think Snow White, obviously, but I think even without it, probably was Snow White because I think Snow White was bigger than Cinderella. You maybe Wizard of Oz, but no, maybe Cinderella. I mean Snow White. I guess is what I would say.
Now, I forgot to add this slide, so stand by
Ah,
just a second here.
okay, all right. Well, while you do
Um,
that,
yeah, feel
yeah,
free.
I will say, Sam said Disney's cultural impact is why the U.S. government used him to help convey critical information during the war in a way that was approachable for the whole family.
So, with the most successful movies of all time, we have Avatar, Avengers, Avatar Way of Water, Titanic. Notice these are all very high grossing movies. I mean, Avatar made almost $3 billion. Let's take a look here. Snow White and the Seven Dwarves is way down there. It made $1.48 million. It's not considered anywhere close to the top. It's considered, well, basically nothing by comparison. So, thus raises the question, was Snow White a failure? I mean, it made money for the time, so it wasn't a failure. But then you start looking at the history and you start looking around and realize how much of our modern world actually has merchandise from this movie. How many elements at theme parks there are? How many knockoff like animations or shorts that were done that were using the characters? How many attempts to try and re-release the films or DVDs, whatnot? And you start to realize, dang, this thing is actually very successful. In fact, I would say it is the most successful movie of all time. And it's solely because of my own personal experience working at the Disney parks and seeing the amount of merchandise people were buying related to this film. Disney had made a great film that made money not just for the box office, but for generations. And it's still going strong. The number is so high that I'm sure that only the Disney company knows what that number is, and they refuse to let it out because I think it'd be a bit embarrassing for a lot of their modern projects because it introduces something that we hit upon earlier: longevity, upon having a purpose to your story, having something that tells a good story with good characters and good morals, something that makes it timeless. And Snow White hit upon that, whereas a lot of modern films don't. It is very fascinating to see.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of writing a good story in Disney has not been lost, not technically. During the 90s, there was a perfect example of what it means to tell a good story versus, just being paid to tell a story. There were two teams that were split. Disney had gotten to such a size, they started making films with multiple teams. One team was dedicated towards what was expected to be the most successful film of the decade, Pocahontas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Wes Cagle's here. Hey, Wes Cagle. Welcome in. Good to see you, Wes. How are you doing tonight? Pocahontas, yes. But that seems to be one of the Disney movies that have died on a vine, though. It's not gotten as much attention in recent years.
Yeah, isn't that kind of fascinating?
Yeah.
It was thought to be like, they thought it was going to be as successful as Beauty and the Beast and or Sleeping Beauty. They expected that to happen, and it didn't. But by contrast, the runner-up team, the B team, was tasked with making a film that they were just dubbing Bambi in Africa. And they were told that basically this is a kind of a throwaway story. It's not going to be great. Don't put too much effort into it. You're being given, the extra team members. But when they got together, they all started realizing they had something in common. And it was that many of the main team members had all lost fathers. And suddenly the story became nostalgia driven. Remember how I said nostalgia can be a bad thing? This was an area where it was used for good, because nostalgia started to cause them to say, you know what, in positive memory of our fathers, let us dedicate this to our families in that sense. And they leaned in hard with it. And of the two films, even though Pocahontas is a masterpiece, Lion King is the one that has been truly king of animation. It has made so much money and is basically the Snow White of the modern day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's some, accusations that Disney knocked off a film in Japan, and while there is a lot of similarities, you could say they did the same thing with Snow White. So I don't necessarily buy into that 100%. It is a unique story. Now, some of the characters are a little too similar, but I give them a pass personally.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to go back a couple of years and show you me back when I was working at the parks and why I became so passionate about this stuff to begin with. So back in 2012, I got a chance to work on the Disney College program.
I remember you did, yeah. That's really
this was
cool.
Me out in the wilds, and the photo on the left, I was there. There was someone from our church who came down to visit, and I didn't know they were there, and so they took a photo. I just saw this flash, and didn't realize that they had gotten that snapshot. Man, I miss those days.
I remember those crazy Epcot shirts.
Indeed. Yeah. By the way, those are the best shirts in the world. Oh my goodness. I wanted to take one back with me. Babyface Jeff. Yes, Jess. That is indeed what it was. I was required to shave off any facial hair, and oh my goodness, they gave us the worst razors. It was always a bloody mess.
Oh yeah. The cheap hotel. Yeah, the cheap hotel. Yeah. Yes, It definitely had the best Yes.
And so that building that you see in the lower right is where I worked. Um, Fascinating experience. I got a whole lot out of it, but but when I got back to college, people said, "Hey, should we go on the program?" I said no, because I realized how dark things were getting down there. And we won't go into why, but let's just say that there's good reason not to send your kids to this program alone. Now, if they
Mm.
go with a friend, they're going to be doing much better, but do not send them alone. I was mercifully spared, but most people were not. So while I was there, I got a chance to take a class, and it was a leadership course taught by who identified as the sixth most important man in the company. He was in charge of resorts, in particular the Alani Resort, and so he got a chance to teach us. While we were there, he gave us some insider information, and it was a test to see if we would leak it. He said, "Hey everybody, just so you know, we're in the final talks with George Lucas to buy Star Wars. And also, we're going to be getting the rights to Avatar to make a park." And immediately, everyone was moaning, like, "Oh no." And he got very upset. He's like, "What's wrong with you guys? This is a good thing. You're a part of the company's, you know, the ground floor of this company, like going off in a new direction. This is great." And you're like, "It's going to ruin it." And see, a lot of us in 2012 had already seen 4 years of Disney starting to falter. And then we were
Mm-hmm.
starting to see what the company was like on the inside. And it made us discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
It was the soul of Disney being eroded away. And we didn't know why it was being eroded away, but the signs were all there. And this is where I started to realize Disney was on its last legs. I came across a couple of animators. They were scattered throughout the parks, and only a few of them would tell me their story.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, this guy right here. Um, I actually got to meet that guy. I found his photos online, so they're not the official ones of the one that I saw, but it was a very interesting experience because this guy had worked on Brother Bear, and he ended up working here and at Hollywood Studios at the time, and he was nothing more than a human stamp machine. You're not allowed to deviate from the drawings that you were given. So he went from making motion pictures to
Mm-hmm.
this. Very disheartening. Well, they came up and they gave him his pin for it to of recognition for his senior level and all his decades of working for the company, and they just gave him this little tiny pin. And in his he smiled and thanked them, and then the moment they left, he took it and he threw it across the table, and it just disappeared somewhere in the clutter. And I thought, "Oh, I want to talk to this guy." But it was moments like that that changed my perspective on what had happened to the company. And I realized they didn't care about the artisans that made the film great. They cared about one thing alone, and that was money here and now, not longevity of revenue, only the money that they could make in the moment. And so people like that were being let go in order to hire people from the Philippines and Thailand in particular. By the way, they got busted for this, and
Oh
thankfully
yeah.
the state of Florida ended up like in a lawsuit with them, and so they stopped it. But they found other creative ways to get around it. They just moved the studio. So rather than artists or storytellers or experts, Disney began experimenting with something new. Not just people that they were bringing in, but something that folks were starting to call the formula. And this is where everything really took a hard turn for the worse. Have you heard about the formula before?
No, I haven't.
So the
Oh, by the way,
formula,
before we get into that, Mr.
yeah,
Angel said, as a European, kind of ironic to get hit with a copyright strike for modern Disney. for IP when they ripped off half of our cultural heritage.
There's truth in that.
Yeah, yeah, all the fairy tales that we talked about and stuff like that.
Oh, Disney and their lawsuits. So the formula is an interesting thing. It's hard to prove nowadays, but everyone was talking about it in the early 2010s. I tried to find like follow up to this stuff because everyone was familiar with this. And ironically enough, I've had a hard time trying to find like the definitive proof anymore. So I still have a couple of bits and pieces here and there to be able to present my argument, but I think they realized that this was not healthy for them, and so they started to backtrack on, publicizing it. The
Mm-hmm.
formula was introduced as a mathematical way for a recipe to the perfect film.
Hmm.
As with many Disney films, they would dedicate some sort of test movie to prove a concept. And as we understand, it was Frozen that was chosen for this. And it could be said that they even tested it on Tangled, but it's a little hard to be able to prove that one. But the formula was definitely around for Frozen. And that was a point where I started noticing this very painfully. In the movie, there are moments where they subverted expectations, and it felt weird. It's like, where'd that come from? Or they would have a joke that just came out of nowhere. And again, it's like, why is that the case? Well, it turns out that there were people watching about whether or not people were staying addicted to the screen. And the moment they would veer away, they would say, hey, we need to throw a joke in here. Hey, we need to break into song and dance. Hey, we need to have a changing of the setting or have somebody make an offhand comment. Maybe someone, the whole gamut. They had a strategy to keep you glued to the screen. Well, you could say it's a little bit like what AI is trying to do nowadays, or what the slot machines on YouTube or whatnot are kind of like. But the thing was that the formula was designed to make their stories better, and it started out to work. It made Frozen incredibly successful, a lot of money, and it worked for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a problem when you do that. You see, I got to see this in action here. Actually, let me see. Did I mention it right here? Da, 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 da. No, I think I mentioned it in another point. But the formula, is related upon a mathematical equation. Human beings, while we can have mathematical elements to us, we're very much biological. We're very much experience driven. And once we start to feel things are too mathematical, we start to shut off. And so the whole concept worked until it didn't. Star Wars being a perfect example of how that kind of happened. So,
Mm-hmm.
why does it not work? Well, because random elements stuck together do not really create a compelling story. And I don't know if you've ever seen the film being shown right here, but The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is an example
Mm-hmm.
of a random story where it's just a bunch of random elements mindlessly
Right.
glued together. And it's like, why is that the case? Oh, it's just random. Haha, it's hilarious. For a reason as to why is because of something I learned at college. A student decided that he had this great idea for this fantasy movie. He wanted to have a bunch of dinosaurs in a space world, and the dinosaurs could teleport between planets. And so thus you wanted to try and get bigger and better dinosaurs and, mounted with all sorts of weapons and whatnot. And it sounded as bad as it could have been. And after a while, we were like, it sounds childish. It sounds pitiful. But the problem was that he was convinced he had found something successful, showing that just because you have an idea doesn't mean other people are going to think it's good. You may think it's good, but other people don't necessarily think that themselves. And when you start getting multiple writers start to do this, they start to congratulate each other. And thus, they don't start to think about their story critically. They start to think of it in terms of what is either formulaic or random. Did you ever watch Veggie Tales?
Yes. The old days were the good ones. They got weird when they went on to NBC. Yeah. QWERTY.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Well, there's a scene that came out in which it was showing what it was like to have something random. In this episode, Larry is trying to show off the humor of tomorrow. He said, in the future, entertainment will be randomly generated. And one of the robots demonstrates by saying, why did the chicken cross the road? I don't know. Why did the chicken cross the road? Weed eater. Like,
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Why? But it was so on the nose for what was happening in the culture. Because, as it turns out, the formula wasn't the only time people were using this.
Oh, well, it's like, where's my hairbrush? Some of the shows, some of the things like, where's my hairbrush? Oh, where? Or my car hit a water buffalo. What? Made no sense. It just was.
Precisely. Well, around 2010, I got a chance to see some things when I was at college. I don't know how many students were introduced to this, but we were actually being shown the way of the future. It was devices, early prototypes of AI, but they were formulaic. They were automated ways to write stories. They were automated ways to generate music. This happened in 2008 to 2010 that I saw these things. To the point where they even had a camp that you could put in for to go and learn how to use these automated tools. I did not go, but they were trying to make it like, hey, this is the way of the future. You all should go and do this. It's like, nope. That sounds stupid. Little did I know that they were pushing that to really kind of take over the industry. And so, you gotta wonder, if you give students this idea that you can just randomly put stuff together, or that they can just, generate it, or use a formula, you don't really get good storytellers. So thus raises the question, where did Disney go wrong? And we're going to kind of skip this one a little bit, because this gets deep.
Hey, buddy. Good to see you, buddy. Hey.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy.
Yep.
Veggie Tales. Yes, indeed. So we're going to skip a good portion of this. And instead, we're going to go directly to the pivotal moment that everything changed. 2005, Bob Iger. This man has been the most devastating individual to the company. By the way, he made half of the company's income went straight to him. That guy is rich beyond belief, and he had no care in the world for the artisans that he started to fire. He was in a power building move, and this guy even started saying, I want to be president.
Yeah.
So everything started to reflect this desire to make a massive fortune, and it came at the expense of the very company he was entrusted with.
VeggieTales had Christmas movies, but I love their VeggieTales Christmas songs. They had one that's the Polish Christmas dishes. So, where did you go to college, Jeff?
So now that's a very interesting question. I went to a college that didn't actually teach me a whole lot of what I went in to study, but we got a chance to see into the industry quite well. I went to two places. I went to Dordt. I also went to Cedarville.
Cedarville, Indiana?
It is in Ohio.
Ohio.
So I went to Iowa and Ohio.
Ohio, gosh. Yeah.
Yes. There's a reason why I don't like the Midwest.
Yes, exactly. We have a
there.
thing. Anna and I have this thing about nuking Ohio from orbit, just to be sure, bringing back the Aliens franchise.
So one of the things that we got to see though is that there was a person going around. There's a couple of people that were going around Midwest colleges because there's a whole lot around there, and they were promoting these, these tools or these innovations or the way of the future, and they would go and they would take like a class period to try and pitch these ideas. And after a while, it's like, I really don't want to hear this stuff. I kind of want to stay focused on the classes or on projects, but we still had to be indoctrinated with it. One of the things we got to see was the very first form of Google Glass, and we were given a sample to experiment with. And they said, who wants to make stuff for this? And we're like, this hurts our eyes. And nobody jumped on the bandwagon. But it was around 2008 that many of us started feeling that something was not right with Disney. And no one really knew what was going on. But we all knew it had one person that surrounded it. And that was indeed Bob Iger. And we didn't know all the ins and outs of what had happened, but we did know that the company was forever changed. Modern Disney started to lean into this idea that there is nothing new under the sun, so don't strive, don't just repeat the same stories over and over again. Let's not hire great writers, let's just have people randomly stitch stuff together. I don't know if you've ever tried to tell a story, but you tell the best stories that you have personal experience with. If you don't have that personal experience, it shows.
Yeah. But I'd say Disney went wrong by taking the wrong lessons from wins and failures. So they decided that 2D animation was not viable, but because the last few pictures they made were bad films, not that they were 2D animation. So.
Absolutely. And right now, Disney's trying to get their 2D animation up and running again. I don't think it's going to work because I think the problem is that their values of the company are rotted. And so it doesn't matter what the visuals are. The problem is their team still there? And it's not. Most of their people are gone. And a lot of them have passed on now at this point. There was no handoff of the technology. There's a handoff of technologies, not technique, not value. And so it really changed to the point of where there is no way to go back without shaking up the company from the roots. Bob Iger was indeed the perfect storm to destroy the company. Now, I want to take a quick little detour, and we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because, I could go on for too long with this one. But you get ideas based upon events that take place in your life. Aladdin came about as a result of people that had been in Iran. They came back and they told stories about the Middle East. And they're like, hey, this actually makes for interesting stories. And so thus it inspired this masterpiece. And sometimes you try and imitate something. And we're kind of going through these ones a little fast because, again, take forever on this. You write and you draw what you know. And so, for example, people back when they were making Beauty and the Beast, they wanted to feel what it was like to be afraid so they could draw the beast in a meaningful way. So the lead animator decided that he wanted to be locked in a cage with a gorilla. And so he did that, and he actually went back and redesigned the beast because of that. And that's why I would say the animated beast feels more impactful than the live action. But it's things like that. Experience started to get replaced with kind of either virtue signaling or outsourcing or any other number of things that have caused the company to start to fall to pieces. And it doesn't matter which of the stories, every one of them has started to see an erosion of their values and their staff. And so there's been a very clear progression of stories that have been getting worse and worse and worse. And again, no one really knew why. They were like, something's wrong, but they didn't realize it was the teams that were gone. And the teams were what made everything function. So rather than try and build up those teams, Bob Iger got this genius idea, I'll just go out and buy everything. And so if he owns everything, well, then there's no competition. There's no need for innovation. There's no need to make the story better than the next guy, because they all have to come back to you anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and thus loops it all back
Star
around
Wars.
to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, those
Yep.
movies were awful.
Yeah. And Mr. Angel said modern Disney movies do not care about good storytelling, only about the dollars in the pocket. Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. Dollars speak.
So if I was to ask you, have you ever heard why George Lucas sold Star Wars?
I've heard different stories.
Well, there was a we were kind of hinted at when I was working at the company as to what was going on. And there was an interview where George Lucas actually mentioned this back in the early 2000s when they were asking him, so now you're coming to the end of Revenge of the Sith. What now? And a lot of this stuff that you're about to see came from that. George Lucas was very much like Walt Disney, an innovator. He had a deep passion for storytelling, and he also didn't trust Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
He separated his away from it early on. He kind of became Hollywood B, you could say. He made the story that he wanted to tell, separate from the corporate pressure. But the problem was that from the very start he knew that he wanted to stay away from it. But around Return of the Jedi, some doubt started to come into his mind, and in preparation for the prequels, he started like thinking what would happen after his series was over. Now, fans knew that he was making the prequels. He made that very clear. And after that, people started asking him, are you going to do a sequel trilogy? Because they looked
Mm-hmm.
at the original cast and said, hey, they're getting older. If you're going to do something, now is the time. And Lucas was like, no, I've told the story I wanted to tell. That is going to have to be it for me. Well, he started to invest into people that were writing books and into people that were making TV shows. He started just writing off, like, hey, you're allowed to do this, you're allowed to do that. And he didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. The fandom was growing, it was at the height of its popularity. But George Lucas continued to get worried about his child, this world that he had built. And he mentioned about his fears in interviews, which I remember seeing, like I said, in the early 2000s. So at that moment, he began to receive calls from Disney that was requesting to buy the IP.
Mm-hmm.
With the success of Star Tours, Disney seemed like a safe bet. Michael Eisner had been very kind to George Lucas. They had been very faithful to his requests, and he had no reason to doubt Bob Iger's efforts. Well, we all know how that went. But it wasn't Bob Iger's fault. It was actually George Lucas's fault. See, I don't know how many people are aware, but Kathleen Kennedy, the person who many people kind of cite as the reason for a Star Wars downfall, she was there from the very beginning. She was helping out George Lucas, and he actually trusted her. He had been mentoring her to kind of be the caretaker of his franchise when he was ready to hand it off. And so I remember seeing the interview where he was like, she is like the one who knows everything about the story. She has been dedicated, and she was like, yes, we want to be reverential to the story. And she sounded like she actually cared. She was a wolf in sheep's clothing. But there was another guy there, another guy that George Lucas could have given it to, who had done exactly the same as Kathleen Kennedy. And now this is one where you're going to get a lot of people that are going to disagree with me on this.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Filoni is equally bad.
Yep.
And he introduced the world to how to change the core story of Star Wars and get away with it. The books had already been doing it, but he did it for the people that were, maybe not the avid readers, the people that had been watching the movies and they said, hey, let's turn on the TV show and see what this is like, only to be disappointed when they realized they're starting to do things that George Lucas did not sign off on. And Lucas himself didn't know what was happening. He had been signing off on everything. He didn't sit down and watch the movies, watch the TV shows, or read the books. He was too focused on his movies. But now that the movies were over, he was like, wait a minute. What are you guys doing to this stuff? You're destroying my children. And he found out that Filoni was adding a whole lot of weird things that we credit Kathleen Kennedy with, but he is actually the source for it. So why did Disney Star Wars get so bad? It all goes back to Filoni and what he did with the Clone Wars, as well as the multitude of books that came out, and video games, honestly. Lucas had made one fandom. Filoni made another. Or at least I would credit as making another. The IP was starting to get too loose. Suddenly, Anakin had a Padawan. Darth Maul came back from the dead. Sidious came back from the dead. The rule of two was broken. The clone troopers now are chipped rather than being, genetically engineered to betray the Jedi. Mandalore was now a race, which, by the way, it was supposed to be a dead race, and that's why Jango Fett was, willing to clone himself, because the original concept was that he was the last of the Mandalorians, and much more. In the books, there were races introduced that were worse than the Sith. The Jedi somehow started to survive Order 66. Important battles became sidelined by new ones, and more. It was not Disney that destroyed Star Wars. It was Lucas, George Lucas, by being careless with his IP. And that, when I started realizing it, that started to make a lot of sense. So, even though I would like to blame Kathleen Kennedy, I realized that it didn't start with her. She was just the embodiment of a problem that is much, much deeper. Well, Disney came onto the scene and started making their own films. And they said, hey, we got a problem. There are 3 camps now. Well, technically 2, but Disney made a third one. There was the George Lucas camp. There was the Filoni and Expanded Universe camp. And then there was Disney. Disney had to start to unify them. And they thought, hey, we can do this by introducing Rogue One, something that's designed, tailored to the old fandom, to bring them into the new. And then they looked at the Filoni group and said, let's make something for them. And then you have The Mandalorian. If you look at it, it starts to make a lot of sense, because it's all designed to funnel them to the new. Now, it's debatable as to why this necessarily was their strategy, but I think it was designed to try and get the money away from George Lucas. Because a couple of theories have been put out there as to why this had happened. They pay George Lucas every time they use his characters. Every time you see General Grievous, he gets paid. Every time you see Luke Skywalker, he gets paid. Every time you see characters like Darth Maul, he gets paid.
Yay, Maul!
But that doesn't explain everything. See, other people think it's just because the executives don't understand Star Wars. And that makes sense.
No, they don't.
I don't think that's the case either. I think it's part of it. I actually think it's intentional. See, when you start to look into how Disney operates, you start to realize a lot of it is designed for propaganda. I hate to put it that way, but even Walt Disney himself leaned into the propaganda aspect. Disney had a memo, and we skipped this part earlier, and I'm going to avoid going into it, but there was a memo put out that said the world was going to be different than basically what the fandom wanted to acknowledge. And so thus they started to lean into that. It colored how Disney saw the world. And as a result, this internal memo redirected how Star Wars would be used. It was designed to help bring about a new world, you could say. Sequel trilogy was part of that. Yes, they didn't understand the series. yes, they had suddenly a lot of nonsense that was kind of put out there because, it already been established. But there was a motive as to why they wanted to do this. And they had to do it with a project that people loved. And that's why we have gotten something so weird, and why I personally cannot see anything of value in most of the stuff that has been made. Yes, they have moments that are good, but they use the nostalgia as a weapon to try
Mm-hmm.
and change Star Wars. Now, if you ask the average person what they think of Star Wars, a lot of people either cringe or they say, "Oh, it's so cool, and we got Baby Grogu and whatnot." By the way, Baby Grogu was designed to get mothers to want to watch the series primarily. The
And it's
number of
funny.
people that did that. Ugh.
And it was funny that they did also, but they didn't come out with enough toys at first. They failed to anticipate the demand that they would have had.
Indeed.
It's crazy. So
And that's why you get things like this.
yep.
Why you have Darth Maul
Yep.
coming back. Or the
Where's
Sidious
Sashi?
problem.
Where's Sashi? Fallout Dave, Lisa, all you guys. It's like you don't kill. The point is, don't kill off a villain. Don't come up with some weird supernatural way to do it, because what they did with him, greater Sith Lords did not even do. Even them that managed, they had to throw their bodies into bodies that died really, really quickly, or they were forced to stay in holocrons or in temples. They couldn't just roam.
Mm-hmm.
But he magically gets spider legs and he can run around the world and everything.
Around the whole universe. But isn't that interesting that they had to do this rather than lean into his brother?
Yeah.
They could have done
Savage
that.
Oppress, yeah.
Fix the problem. But
Yeah.
no, they had to go back and nostalgia bait for the people that were like really excited about it rather than have somebody new. And there is way more I could go into, but we're going to start to wrap it up here and opening it up again for like, hey, that was the whole presentation as I currently have it. Yes, we could go deeper, but there are a couple of options we have at this point. If you have like some topics you kind of want to explore, that is open. We can talk about how Disney could have salvaged some of their series. We can go into like some of the things that were changing in the values of the company, or something else.
Yeah. Well, I think we've done a good job with where we're at. Yeah, funny they want to keep Grogu such a surprise. And see, deleting the expanded universe, they eliminated compensation, created the lore vacuum Filoni filled. Yeah, because they didn't want to pay rights and all that, like with the existing older characters Lucas created. So, but I will say that I think one of the mistakes they would have made was to do the expanded universe too literally, because then it would have been boring. We knew what was coming. There would have been no mystery to it. And I think that you could have done different things with it to make it, but then still not gut the Skywalker lineage. So,
Absolutely.
That's what I think. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if anybody else has got any comments out there. I think that it's we'll take a look at here. Biggest problem with Maul is how they integrated him into Mandalorian, the Mandalorians. Yeah, that he didn't fit in with them. So let's see. Anyway, so let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, delete the expanded universe. Yeah, I mean, and we've seen it with Star Wars. We've seen it in Star Trek, and then they double down with the characters, like bringing Lizzo and Jack Black.
Oh my goodness, that was such a bad episode. It had good elements, but it was. That's the problem. They're always good elements, and they don't know how to make it work.
Yep. No, exactly. That's like you said with bad storytelling. So. We see on Star Trek Ahsoka, and everything else. Yeah, Ahsoka. Yeah,
Ahsoka was incredibly unlikable in the series because she started espousing dark side elements.
Right.
It's like, what sort of person is this?
And then they had that female Spider-Man over in the Marvel thing, and it's like the female Iron Man, and it's Ironheart, and it was like, oh god, that was unsufferable too. So, But
By the way, Marvel has suffered tremendously from from the formula.
yeah,
Um, they're the ones that actually kind of heard it like was being used to make their, you know, because they
yeah,
had so many films. So it's like, oh, this is easy, just kind of like formulaically create a
yeah.
film.
No, don't hate Bobby Frick. Yeah, Babu. Yeah, I agree with that. I liked the big worm guy. The one that looked like an appendage. I forgot what his name
You
is.
mean Jabba the
So
Hutt?
no, the other guy in the last one that was a armless engineer on the Millennium Falcon. So
Ah,
anyway, well, Jeff, I think we'll cut it here tonight. I think it was a good presentation. I think well, lots of great discussion and all, and thank you for being here, and we appreciate it, Jeff, and everybody else. Thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it. And how do you feel about John Favreau?
not good.
No, I know.
Most of the people in the industry right now, I don't feel confident in because I think that most of them don't understand the reasons that they need to be telling a story. They don't understand the value, the pros and the cons, nor do they care about the fandom. They care about one thing alone, and that is money. If they really cared about the fandom, they would do something very similar to what they did with the Dark Crystal. Did you ever see the Dark Crystal?
No, no, I didn't.
So Muppets. Jim Henson had this idea for a fantasy world, and he made a movie, and it was kind of not very good. Well, somebody really liked the story, and so he leaned into making an entire fan fiction of the story, and it was actually really darn
Mm-hmm,
good. And it's called Age of Resistance.
mm-hmm.
One of my favorite miniseries I've ever seen, and I hated the film. So it was an area where a fan made a better story. If Disney really cared, or Marvel,
Mm-hmm.
or anything, they would get the people that are
Yeah,
passionate about this stuff. And the people that are in charge are not passionate. They're famous. And that's the problem.
yep. All right. Well, thank you for Jeff and everybody that's here tonight. We appreciate it, and we'll find ways. We'll continue the discussion at some point. I'm sure, Jeff. Man, how long did it take you to put a presentation like this together?
Way longer than you would think. But the thing is that I've been wanting to make this presentation for a long time to kind of, well, justify the effort. And this gave me the reason to actually go about doing it.
Absolutely. I'm glad we could help you, and we'll fine tune it. And we'll be back again more. This is one of those 2 hours, like that. What we probably should just do is schedule, like, do it again and have just like a brief presentation, like a 20-minute presentation, and then open it question and answers, and then take it off in all the different directions we can take.
Indeed, this is
Because
a
otherwise,
subject
talk
that
about 6 or 7 hour stream. Yeah.
yeah, people
Yeah.
could go all over this. And like I said earlier, people that many times are talking about this stuff, they know that they have an opinion about it, but they don't quite understand why. This was
Yeah.
hopefully gave folks a chance to kind of think about their own opinions about the subject and try and see about why
Yeah.
it matters so much to them.
Yeah. You're always tweaking from what Jess says. So
Indeed. I
good.
spend too much time trying to perfect stuff.
All right, Jeff. What do you do more these days? Where do people find you?
Well, the number one thing is that I'm still trying to develop Castercraft, and it is hopefully if you find interested in kind of the story elements that I'm trying to figure out, or some of my reviews on that, you can find the very first written story that I put on my website. I also have a printed version of it right here. It's just a short little story, but it's designed to try and highlight what I believe is important for telling a short story. There's other stories I have in the works, and hopefully those will be out relatively soon. But yeah, that's some of the stuff I'm doing, trying to figure out how to actually take the concept of telling a good story and actually prove it by making it.
Look, I've been almost calling him Jess, and I've been trying to call you Jeff for a week now. So yes, exactly. And I'm calling everybody all kinds of different names this week. So, all right. Well, Jeff, thank you again for that, folks. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe, and we appreciate y'all being here and everything. And great presentation. And Oliver said the Russo brothers helped Disney make big money with Marvel's Avengers Infinity War. Endgame, Avengers Doomsday, Secret Wars will probably undo the success. Probably because nobody asked for Doomsday, from what I hear. And we got Robert Downey Jr. coming back as Doom. That's going to be weird. But anyway, good to see Oliver coming in here at the end. But folks, thank y'all for being here. Jeff, thank you again. And everybody have a wonderful night tonight. And we will catch you the next time we go live. Sam asks, is there thank you, Jess, for posting the link there. Is there, and is there a new IP that you are excited about?
Unfortunately, no. The only one that I've been enjoying recently is Dune, but I've heard some problems that, well, there's some problems with that story that would take way too long to discuss.
Yeah.
Let's just say that when Tolkien evaluated Dune, he had a very bad review for it, and I can agree with his review. But it's still an exciting story, but it's not one you're going to want to kind of see the conclusion to.
Right, I got you.
I do want to end off by saying much appreciated for letting me get a chance to come on and talk about this.
Absolutely.
I love talking about this subject,
Mhm.
and there's not, I've done it on my channel beforehand, but at some point you just start feeling like you're just rehashing the same stuff. This gave me a chance to consolidate it in a way that kind of felt, well, it helped it feel more unified. And next time it'll be even better.
Sounds good. All right. Jeff, thank you. Folks, thank y'all very much. We will catch you next time. Bye, everybody.